Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience. I want to make sure that the audio is working. So before we start the stakeholder meeting, it would be helpful for me if people could raise hands. That tells me that you can hear me okay. Awesome. And you can go ahead and lower your hands if you raise them. That way we know whether you would like to provide stakeholder feedback when we get to that time. Good morning, welcome, and thank you for attending the joint stakeholder meeting for the Colorado Board of Accountancy, Colorado Office of Combative Sports, and Colorado Combative Sports Commission, State Electrical Board, State Board of Licensure for Architects, Professional Engineers, and Professional Land Surveyors, Office of Outfitters Registration, State Plumbing Board, Office of Audiology Licensure, Colorado Dental Board, Office of Hearing Aid Provider Licensure, State Board of Addiction Counselor Examiners, State Board of Marriage and Family Therapist Examiners, State Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners, State Board of Psychologist Examiners, State Board of Social Work Examiners, State Board of Unlicensed Psychotherapists, Colorado Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators, Office of Respiratory Therapy Licensure, State Board of Veterinary Medicine, and State Board of Pharmacy via webinar today. The date is July 26, 2021, and the time is 9:08 a.m. Before we get started, we would like to introduce the staff members from the Division of Professions and Occupations that are present on the webinar today. My name is Garcia, and I'm a regulatory analyst with the division. Also attending is Nate Brown, Policy Advisor, and Elena Kemp, Regulatory Coordinator. We will be facilitating this stakeholder meeting. Due to concerns regarding COVID-19, the division has transitioned to a platform that is 100% virtual, and we appreciate your flexibility. As many of you have been to DORA stakeholder meetings before, we would like to reiterate the importance of your comments today. DORA makes decisions every day that may affect your life and your business, and your input is vital in the rulemaking process. Throughout this process, our goal is to create regulations that clarify and explain legislation, ensure minimum competency to enter and continue to practice, and provide only what is absolutely necessary for consumer protection without creating unnecessary barriers to the marketplace. Your input will be part of the information that goes to each board and to the director as the board and the director consider adopting revisions to the rules to implement Colorado Senate Bill 21077 concerning the elimination of verification of an individual's lawful presence in the United States as a requirement for individual credentialing. This bill has already passed the legislative process and was signed into law by the governor and is now law and will be effective. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on each board's website and program's website by the close of business tomorrow. As this stakeholder meeting is held solely by webinar, please raise your hand by using the hand icon if you would like to speak, and we will unmute your lines. You will be heard by everyone. Or you can type your comment in the question function and we will read it aloud for the recording and for other members on the call. I want to ask anyone providing comments, please state your name and who you represent. Feel free to indicate what license type or what board or program you are speaking on behalf of. Feel free to provide either general comments on the rule changes or specific comments on the proposed language. And because we have so many people who are participating today, we ask that you keep your comments limited to no more than 3 minutes. Try not to repeat something that was already said. Stating you're in full agreement with someone else works just fine and will be noted. Some housekeeping. If you are using the audio through your computer, please remember to put any phones on vibrate or turn them off. And whether you are using computer or phone audio, try to keep background noises to a minimum when speaking. So before we get started with taking stakeholder comments, I'm going to turn it over to Nate Brown, who is a policy analyst with the division, to give a little bit more information about this new legislation. So Nate?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Darcy. Again, my name is Nate Brown. I'm a policy advisor here with the Division of Professions and Occupations. I did a lot of work on this bill with the legislature as it was going through the process. So Darcy wanted me to give a little bit of background and maybe a little bit of context for some folks who had some questions about where this came from and why this state decided to make this change. So very first thing I will point out is that this change is specifically allowed by federal immigration statutes. So if you're really interested, you can go look up Title 8, United States Code, Section 1621D, and that portion of federal law explicitly gives the state to make this change, the change made by this bill. So what is it doing? So the big thing that it does is it removes the requirement for someone to prove and for the state or local governments to verify whether or not somebody is what's known as lawfully present in the country. Lawful presence has a very specific meaning under federal immigration law, a meaning that often led to inconsistencies with the way certain non-citizens are treated. For example, somebody who was what's called paroled into the country for less than a year is currently allowed to obtain a license from the state. However, and this is the issue that this first came up in those under DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which is a federal program that allows certain individuals to stay in the country lawfully. They are allowed to stay and work in the country for no less than 2 years. And they, because of the way, again, that term lawful presence is defined, they are barred currently, or before this bill, at least, were barred from getting a license. So part of the issue that this bill is addressing is that sort of inconsistency in the way certain otherwise similarly situated folks are treated. There's also a growing sense, the governor's office on down, that it is not the state's position to essentially enforce federal immigration laws. This bill only deals with that narrow issue of not requiring somebody to prove their lawful presence. However, it does not change any of the other qualifications to attain a license in any way, really. There still has to be the same education, training, take the same tests, all of that. So they still have to meet the same basic qualifications as anybody else. They just, right now, we're just removing that sort of administrative barrier to somebody getting a license. And it also saves the state, quite frankly, the state and local governments a lot of time and expense of having to sort of validate somebody's lawful presence. So that's basically what this bill does. It also expands the identification that somebody's able to use. Currently, you have to use a social security number. This bill also opens it up to individual taxpayer identification numbers, which is a number you get from, again, the federal government to pay your taxes. So they'll be able to prove their identification through that way as well. But those are the main things that this bill does. Pretty much all it does with respect to the Division of Professions and Occupations. And I'm happy to answer any questions as we go forward.
Thank you, Nate. So we will go ahead now and take any stakeholder comments. As mentioned, this meeting is being recorded and will be provided to the board and the director who are impacted by this new law. So if you would like to provide any comments, go ahead and raise your hand and we will unmute your line. The first person that I see is Mr. Dennis Weingartz. Mr. Weingartz, you are self-muted. If you unmute yourself, then we should be able to hear you. Dennis Weingartz. While we wait for that, we did receive a written comment from Clayton Harrison. The question is, can you say again what federal law allows this?
Yes, it is. Let me pull up the reference again. 1 second. Sure. So if you look up Title 8, United States Code, Section 1621D, as in dog. That should take you right to that specific federal statute.
Thank you, Nate. Mr. Weingart, Dennis Weingart, you're still self-muted. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand. Looks like you typed in a question. Let me see here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand, and then we'll move on. Thank you for letting me know. Joshua Stallings, I show that your hand is raised. Joshua Stallings, you are self-muted. Looks like you're clear.
Awesome. I'll be interpreting this morning for Mercedes Garcia, who's going to be speaking in Spanish. So we'll take a few pauses so that I can interpret for her.
Okay.
Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es María Mercedes García. Tengo 3 hijas ciudadanas americanas y tengo más de 23 años viviendo en el estado de Colorado. Soy indocumentada, he respetado y respeto las leyes del estado y del país. Y soy una profesionista en mi país, soy enfermera y quisiera tener más información y qué tipo de profesiones acepta esta ley que firmó el gobernador.
So my name is Maria Mercedes Garcia. Good morning to everyone. I have 3 U.S. citizen daughters and have been in this country for more than 23 years. I have respected all the laws of this country and in Colorado. And in my country, I was professional in nursing, and I'm really interested to know, what's going to be included with this new law in terms of being able to allow professional licensing for nursing.
Desgraciadamente, pues aquí no he podido ejercer mi profesión porque no tengo documentos, no tengo nada que me ampare. Entonces, incluso quise hacer un curso de CNA hace como unos 5 años aquí en Lafayette. Entonces, me dijeron que no porque no contaba con contaba con un número de social. Entonces, ¿de qué forma puedo ayudar yo a mi estado, a mi gente?
So I've been, wanting to do nursing again. And about 5 years ago, I had tried to take a CNA course. But because I did not have a social security number, because of my status, I was not able to. And that was here in Lafayette. And so I'm really, wanting to be able to help my people, wanting to be able to serve our state in this way. And I'm, not sure, haven't been able to, and really want to know if that's going to be possible now.
Yo tengo muchas ganas de seguir ejerciendo aquí mi carrera, pero desgraciadamente es una barrera que me lo impide, y más en el área de la salud pública. ¿Por qué? Porque debido a lo del COVID, desde el COVID-19, desde el año pasado, ha estado batallado todo el país por el área de la salud pública, enfermeros, enfermeras, doctores, doctoras, que muchos tenemos profesiones, pero desgraciadamente no lo podemos ejercer. ¿Por qué? Porque no tenemos un número de social o un permiso de trabajo. ¿Cómo podríamos nosotros estar en una posición buena para poder apoyar en esta área de la salud? Ya que también yo tengo muchas amistades que son psicólogos, enfermeros, enfermeras, arquitectos, de muchas profesiones. Entonces, ¿cómo podemos hacer para podernos integrar bien a la comunidad de nuestras áreas profesionales?
And so, this has been a big barrier for me, right, to be able to move forward with my career. And more than that, the health of all of us and, our state, especially due to COVID, that's been a huge impact on all of us. And so a lot of us that are nurses or doctors, other professionals within the medical field, we haven't been able to move forward with our careers and our professions because of lack of status, whether it's because we don't have work authorization or because we don't have social security number to be able to get a license. And so we really want to be able to move forward, to integrate our careers here, to be able to live those out and to be able to serve our communities. And it's more than just medical field. I have a number of friends too that are psychologists and work in other professions that would really benefit our state.
Y pues muchas gracias. Ojalá y que seamos incluidos en esta ley la mayor parte de profesionistas que de alguna manera también, aunque no ejercemos nuestra profesión, hacemos otro tipo de trabajos, pero estamos ayudando a superar este país, a subirlo económicamente. Entonces, si tuviéramos esta oportunidad de ejercer aquí nuestra profesión, pues sería aún más bonito. ¿Por qué? Porque tendríamos también más ingresos, viviríamos una vida digna y les daríamos a nuestros hijos también algo mejor de vida de la que están pasando ahorita, y más con lo del COVID-19. Entonces, pues ojalá que entremos en esta lista de la ley que firmó el gobernador con las profesiones. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
And so hopefully with this new law, we will be included. And, both medical professions and other professions like psychologists and whatnot will be included in this. While we haven't been able to exercise our careers in this country, we worked in other jobs and have done what we could to help out the economy. But this would really be a benefit in allowing us to better serve our community, and really making sure too that we're able to give a better life to our children, that we're able to have a higher income and do more. COVID has been a big struggle, and so this would, be a huge support. And so we're really excited the governor signed this law, and we hope that we all will be included in the professional licenses that this law extends to. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute. Nate, did you want to say anything in response? I would encourage people who have questions about your individual license to contact the division with specific questions, because we can always help you with those and how this law may impact you as an individual. If it's easiest to just send an email to the rulemaking inbox that's posted on the notice for this meeting and posted for all rulemaking stakeholder meetings, that's fine, and we can route your question accordingly. But I think that that's important to know, that if you do have individual questions about your license, to feel free to reach out to the division. We've received some other written questions. We received a question from Andre Rahimi, who said, when was this law passed without a vote? And so this law was passed through the Colorado State Legislature and then signed by the governor. So it went through the entire legislative process. All of the information about how it was passed through the legislative process is available on the Colorado State Legislature's website. And you can track the bill as it went through, and all the different versions of the bill, what committees heard the bill. All of that's available on the state legislature's website. If you search for the bill by its number, you can see all that information. We received another question from Joyce Cowan. Will DORA allow you to use a tax ID number to register a plumbing apprentice if this bill passes? Currently, we need a social security number to register for a plumbing license. Nate, and I think you briefly answered that already, but do you want to explain that again?
Yes, happy to. So so the other part of this bill, the main part is it gets rid of that lawful presence verification requirement, but then the other part of it is allowing for someone who doesn't have a social security number to instead use their individual taxpayer identification number. And that should hold for apprentices as well. I mean, that's a registration. So in my mind, there's no reason that wouldn't be allowed for that as well.
Thank you. And then we received another question from Brian Schaefer. This is Brian Schaefer, a Colorado professional engineer. I am concerned that this revision will make it easier for multinational companies to offshore design work that is currently done and certified locally. Are there any provisions in the new rules or existing rules that will limit this impact? Do you want to address that at all, Nate?
So that's not really an issue that this bill deals with, other than I will say that currently under, this bill takes effect fully on September 7th. So currently, before this bill was signed, before it goes into effect, the law of the state is that somebody who meets all the requirements for most professions, if not all of them, can get a license from the state if they're not in the state. They just have to be able to show that they've met all the other qualifications, taken the tests, all the training and education, right? A lot of CPAs do this. If they're in the state, then they have to prove lawful presence in the country. But if they're not actually a resident of the state, they can still get a license. So unfortunately, that's sort of a different issue than this bill is really trying to get at.
And to piggyback off of that, Nate, Colorado, so it sounds like it might be a jurisdictional issue as well. So we can only regulate within Colorado. So I think that is possibly another issue there. We've received some more written comments from Wayne Yavali. I am concerned that all persons working in the U.S. have to be citizens and verify citizenship. Why is this being permitted? How do you get a tax ID without a social security number? Who is going to enforce these rules? Nate, I know you kind of went over this at the beginning as well. I don't know if you want to explain again, kind of these individuals who are here lawfully, but were not able to get a license. I don't know if you want to go through that again.
Sure, happy to. So just to address the first point, there are a lot of instances where somebody who is not a citizen is allowed to stay and work in the country. For example, people here under DACA are given a work permit. People here who are awaiting their citizenship or their green card, they're allowed to often work in the country. So it's not always the case that you have to be a citizen to work. Tax ID numbers, those individual tax ID numbers are, as far as I know, they were created by the federal government to allow somebody without a social security number to lawfully pay their taxes. So I don't think you actually need to have a social security number to get a tax ID number. They're sort of, one replaces the other kind of thing. In terms of who is going to enforce the rule, the division enforces the law as passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. So we will ultimately be, responsible for enforcing the law. Although I will say that, most of this law requires us to not enforce something. It's taking a burden off the state and taking a burden off of applicants.
Thank you.
Any other
we'll
questions?
go back to Daniel Tucker has his hand raised. You are clear.
Hi, my name is Daniel Tucker, and I'm representing professional engineers in Colorado. I have a couple of questions and a comment. One question is why weren't we, the stakeholders, i.e. the citizens of Colorado, engaged on this before legislation was drafted? If this is supposedly a democracy, which I am increasingly skeptical about, why weren't we engaged? I'm a professional engineer. Standards should not be watered for engineers. Standards shouldn't be watered down for plumbers. Standards shouldn't be watered down for electricians. But that's exactly what this is doing. This is not increasing standards. This is not increasing the safety and general welfare of the people of Colorado. This is going in the wrong direction. It doesn't appear to many in the United States that federal immigration law is being enforced, and yet the position taken by Mr. Brown is that it falls to the federal government to regulate immigration law, And so it shouldn't fall to the states to do that. But in a position where it increasingly appears as though the federal government has no interest in enforcing immigration law, then we, the citizens of Colorado and every state in the union, look to our state legislatures and government to do the job that the federal government will not do. It's apparent to me that this is blatantly political. It is a political move pandering to a certain constituency and has nothing to do with looking out for we, the citizens of Colorado. If this was put to a democratic vote, if this is supposedly a democracy, if this was put to a democratic vote, we would shoot it down, and you know it. And so my question is why wouldn't you bring it to a vote? Why wouldn't this be put to the people? This is a major regulatory change. This is not a minor thing, and this affects industries and professions across the state and across many different class levels. This impacts working class people. This impacts white collar professionals, and correspondingly, everybody that those professions in this state serve. This is an important rule. This is not a minor change. This should have been put to the people. And I'm very, very curious how many people in the state of Colorado know that this law has been passed. I'm very, very curious. I've seen very little about this. I've heard nothing from anyone that I'm in contact, that I'm networked with professionally as an engineer in Colorado. I haven't heard a thing about this. I'd be really curious to know what you think the citizens of this state would say if you had the courage to actually put it to a democratic vote instead of just sliding it through the legislature. And this ends my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. As I mentioned, this did go through the legislative process, and stakeholders were given an opportunity to testify during that process. The bill history is all available on the state legislature's website. You may want to contact your state representative and state senator, as those individuals did have an opportunity to vote on this legislation. And then I'm going to go ahead and mute you, sir. Sorry, because I'm getting an echo. And then the other thing is that at this point in time, with Dora being in the executive branch, it's our responsibility to implement the law. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you would like to weigh in. And we can post or show, I shouldn't say post, show on the screen the legislative history that's available on the state legislature's website, because you can see exactly how it passed through the legislature and follow the entire process there, if that's helpful. Mr. Dennis Weingartz said, I weigh in with Mr. Tucker. I saw your hand is raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you again. And if you would like to speak, you can unmute yourself. You're self-muted. Dennis Weingartz.
Hi, I just wanted to express my opinion that I agree with Mr. Tucker. I further than that have not anything to say, but perhaps, you know, maybe other people could do what I've done and weigh in or not. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand and place you back on mute. Victoria Francis, your hand is raised. Victoria Francis, you're clear. Victoria Francis, if you're trying to speak, we can't hear you. It doesn't look like you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
Wonderful. I just wanted to verify that while this opens up licenses to individuals in these different categories. It doesn't change any of the qualifying education or credentials required to obtain a license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I'm going to place you back on mute and lower your hand. Feel free to raise it again. Daniel Tucker, I show your hand is raised. Again, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi,
Daniel Tucker.
Yeah, I'm here. So as a follow-up to my statements a moment ago, you know, one question that I have is that a federal judge in Texas just ruled that DACA is unconstitutional and that any new applications to the program are to immediately cease. That's something that has been repeatedly referenced by Nate Brown on this call. I had a feeling before the call that that program and other things like it were the impetus for this regulatory move in light of this now, this ruling by this federal judge that it's unconstitutional. Where does it put this? It seems as though the state is putting the cart before the horse with regard to this. Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less. Maybe this issue should be allowed to play out at the federal level before the state makes a move like this. And what recourse do we citizens of the state of Colorado and of the United States have to be able to seek further conversation at the state level, hopefully with the public, hopefully with the engagement of the citizenry of the state, not just the state legislature. The state legislature is one thing, the people of the state are another. So my question is, should this essentially be sent back for further revisions and discussion? But my first question is really about, my primary question is about the unconstitutionality of DACA as ruled by a federal judge within the last week. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I'm going to place you on mute. Sorry. There we go. We'll look into your concerns about the federal court decision. And then I think as far as organizing, that's entirely up to you. As I mentioned, you are welcome to contact your state representative and state senator. And then if you wanted to organize that, that's entirely up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand. I have another hand raised from Ashutosh. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. Dutta. Ashutosh Dutta. You are self-muted. If you unmute on your end, we should be able to hear you.
Okay. My name is Ashutosh Datta, and I'm a CPA from State Board of Accountancy, Colorado. I get my licenses renewed every 2 years as a matter of routine, even though I don't live in Colorado and United States. I live in Canada, but I have a valid social security number because I work there and I have that. So I just signed a statement that I don't live there. I have the social security number and it's routinely renewed. Will that change with this new legislation or supporting regulations that you have put in place?
I think I understood your question correctly, and the answer to that is no, from what I am aware of. Am I correct on that, Nate?
Sorry, I was having a hard time. My phone was cutting in and out, so I wasn't quite aware. I couldn't quite understand the question. My apologies.
Can you repeat the question?
I can repeat the question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'm a CPA from the State Board of Accountancy, Colorado. I lived and worked in the US for some time, and I have a valid social security number, but I don't live there anymore. And for the last 10 years or so, I routinely declare on the website that I have the social security number and I don't live there, and it's routinely renewed. So with this new legislation, I'm seeing it relaxing some of the requirements. Will this change my position particularly? Like, I don't see my status changing for the next, decade or so. My renewal for licenses will continue to be routine, and this new law and the regulations are not going to impact. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. This shouldn't change anything about your particular situation.
Thank you.
I'm going to place you back on mute and lower your hand. We've received a couple more written comments. One from Justin Stober. I also stand with Mr. Tucker and Mr. Weingartz. Another comment from Michael Shaffron. Some professional licenses require the applicant or licensee to meet ethical standards. Do individuals who knowingly violate the lawful presence requirements fail to meet the ethical standards required for licensing? Do you want to weigh in on that, Nate? I think that's part of what you covered earlier as well about people being here lawfully under certain circumstances like DACA or under humanitarian circumstances, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I guess a wider point that I will make is that this particular change, not requiring the proof of lawful presence, is explicitly allowed by federal immigration laws. So the state in this case has decided to exercise its state's rights and say that lawful presence won't be a requirement anymore, as allowed explicitly by federal statute. Again, that statute is Title 8, United States Code, Section 1621D, as in Delta. I don't want to get too much into the intricacies of federal court cases and things. I haven't read about that particular case, but I will say that again, this bill is fully within the right of Colorado to enact this change.
Thank you. We received another written question from Terry Buxton. Has the State Board of Nursing made a determination about what documentation will be required for nursing student graduates to sit for their licensure exam? I'm not sure I fully understand the question and how it relates to this bill. So if you would maybe provide some more specific information about what documentation you're asking for, that would be helpful. We have a few more raised hands. Juan Escobedo, I show your hand is raised and you're unmuted if you would like to provide comments.
Yeah, I want to provide a comment. Appreciate the dialogue and the conversation. I love this bill. I think this bill is definitely very progressive in a way that it's going to fill a lot of gaps in the workforce. Currently, across the board, there is such a great need and demand for physicians, for psychologists, mental health, and the medical field, and nursing, and so on and so on. And particularly, individuals are bilingual, bicultural, multilingual, multicultural. And I really am excited to see, this workforce step up and provide, those necessary services, because there's a lot of individuals out there that are way smarter than me and way smarter than a whole bunch of us put in the group together, but just simply can't because of that simple barrier. At the end of the day, I can only see the opportunities that this workforce will provide in the continued development of the state. And for those that, keep saying, delineating who's citizen or who's not, we all are at one point. We all are here together. We all are eating in the same table. We all are contributing to this great state. So, it's a matter of who gets in who pits out, it doesn't matter. What matters is, what we're bringing to the table. And I think this is what this bill is about, what these individuals will be bringing to the table to continue the investment of Colorado for all of our citizens. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute and lower your hand. The next person that I show is Joel Pourier. Joel Pourier, you are clear. Joel Pourier, if you would like to speak, you are free to speak now. I show we can't hear you if you're trying to talk. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand, place you back on mute. Joel Pourier, oh, you're trying to talk. I saw your comment. We can't hear you, so I'm not sure if it's an audio issue. It shows that you are unmuted on our end and unmuted on your end. The other option that you can, if your computer audio is not working, excuse me, you can always call in. There's a number under the audio tab that you can call in if you wanted to speak via phone and still participate via computer. So while you work that out, and we can send you your audio pen if you wanted to dial in, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand. But once you get back on via audio by phone, we can click on you again. So I'm going to place you back on mute and lower your hand. The next person I show is David Johnson. David Johnson, you're self-muted. David Johnson. There we go. You're good.
Yes, hello. My name is David Johnson. I'm a professional engineer in Colorado and multiple other states. I just wanted to go on record that I do object to Mr. Tucker's comment that he's representing professional engineers on this, because I agree with the previous person who spoke, and that I definitely highly agree with this bill. I think it's been a change long overdue, and I'm proud of our state that we're actually making these changes. So kudos to the legislative bodies that have made this change. And I guess in response to some of the comments that have been made, citizens of Colorado, we have elected all of our legislature. So not directly, but I think we all voted for who has passed this bill. So I don't think we can say that we have not been involved in initiating this kind of change, in that we elected people who were platforming for these types of changes. That being said, I do have a question with regards to the issue that Mr. Tucker brought up regarding the legality of the DACA program. So my question is, if a DACA recipient receives a professional license based on this new policy and provisions, and then the DACA legality, if it becomes completely illegal, and if it goes to the Supreme Court or whatever, and does get completely shut down, I'm wondering if that will expose any of these people, any of these DACA recipients, to higher exposure to being deported due to their newly increased exposure within the state, since they have obtained a license through this process.
We're not able to answer legal questions per se. I will say that this bill removes the requirement of proving lawful presence, right? So it's just a non-action now by the applicant in the state. So we won't be keeping that information like we had been in the past. So the individuals who are applying for licensure, and Nate can correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't going to differentiate anyone from someone else, right? If you're applying for licensure and you meet the requirements for licensure, you will get a license. Nate, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, just real quick. Darcy is essentially correct. You know, DACA is just sort of a convenient example about how this law will change opportunities for folks, but ultimately it's separate. It's a separate issue from DACA. You know, so regardless of how that law, that program is changed at the federal level, shouldn't impact what this law is accomplishing.
Thank you, Nate. So I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand, David Johnson, and I placed you back on mute. You're welcome to raise your hand again. Looks like, let's see here. I'm going to go to some written comments and questions that we received. Terry Buxton, in regards to my previous questions, which forms of documentation such as tax ID, driver's license, or other form of documentation which verifies a person's identity? And I believe you were asking about examination, and that's different than applying for licensure. I am not familiar with the Board of Nursing's requirements and what needs to be submitted to take any of the examinations required for licensure. If you have specific questions about that, I suggest you email the Board of Nursing, or you can email the rulemaking inbox, Dora_DPO_rulemaking, and we can help you find that in the laws or the rules as it relates to applying for examination. Jay Burke, since the 2020 law prohibited any additional unlicensed psychotherapists from being added to the Colorado list of unlicensed psychotherapists after July 2020, am I correct in assuming that no non-citizen will be added to this list of unlicensed Colorado psychotherapists as a result of this PL 21077 law? So that is correct, that this there are no individuals who will be added to the registration of unlicensed psychotherapists because of the law that did pass in 2020 that you're referring to. So your question, you are correct. Linda Burdick, there are enough mental health providers. The problem is there is no funding for mental health in schools and community at a reasonable rate. Currently, Medicaid pays $22 per hour and nothing if client cancels at last minute. Follow up to that, as a school psychologist in LPC, I think this is a positive step forward in encouraging people to go through the naturalization process and become citizens. Thank you. Go back to hands raised. Laura Ring, your hand is raised. You are good to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my name's Laura Rang, and I'm a pharmacist in the state of Colorado, and I'm very proud of our legislature and the legislative system for passing this. Those that may not work in healthcare may not know there is a crisis for trying to find frontline workers. So this gives us a bigger pool of people, and I think it's fair, and I absolutely support it.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand and place you back on mute. Thank you for your patience. Jeff Buttermore, you've had your hand raised now, and so you're self-muted. Jeff Buttermore.
Oh, thank you.
We should be able to hear you. Thank you.
So the idea that we allow the best and brightest to join Colorado and work in Colorado is a great idea, whether they're local or not. But I've worked for companies that have abused this system. As we all know, professional licensure does not guarantee good work or good people. It's just the minimum requirements that we are to meet. And I've worked for companies that have acquired Philippines outfits firms, and they basically just source out all their work to those locations, quality is up for discussion, but it basically outsources and removes revenue from local residents. Whether that's in the best interest of the residents of Colorado is subject for debate. But my question is there anywhere we can listen to discussions on this that before it was approved, so that we at least hopefully hear that some of these issues were addressed and some answers were provided?
Yes. So you can find, if you see Elena's showing on her screen right now, the state legislature's website has all of the information. So you can go to the bill text, the fiscal notes, the committees. I believe if you click on committees, Elena, you should be able to see, if you want to expand the House and State, you can see the vote summaries, you can see the hearing summaries, the committee report. So anytime that it was considered throughout the whole process, all of that is publicly available on the state legislature's website. And you can listen to the hearings, you can listen to the testimony, you can listen to the legislators' questions. So I think that their website is very accessible and very thorough. If you have any questions about that, we are certainly not experts on their website, but I do think it's important for people to know that it exists and it's there. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to go ahead and it looks like you want to say something else. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute. Go ahead, Nate.
Darcy, just real quick. Elena, if you could scroll to the very top of that page. You'll see up in the upper right, it says watch and listen to the previous question. That's where you can go and actually listen to the actual committee hearings. They record all of them. So if you figure out the date on which the bill was heard in a particular committee, you can go and pretty easily find what you're looking for that way. Just to build off what was previously said.
Thanks, Nate. Another hand raised by Brian Danner, I apologize. Brian Danner, you're self-muted. Looks like you're good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a particular fan of this because I just feel like we're going to introduce people who are willing to cut corners at best and are actually, felons at worst into a pool of, licensure is meant to protect the public from people who don't know what they're doing or are willing to cut the corners. I really worry about bringing an engineer into the system who, what kind of corners are they going to cut? Because, if they cut the corner of not getting a green card, a work visa, I don't care if somebody's not a citizen, but the not even going through the process of trying to get something vaguely legal seems like I wouldn't want that as my pharmacist, as the lady who talked previously. What kind of corners are they going to cut? In a foreign country, there's things that are legal to prescribe that aren't the same here in the States. Accountants. What's going to prevent somebody from basically defrauding the public, which is why we have licensure in the first place?
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute and lower your hand. I think to some of the points earlier, the way the law was written before this new law, it would prevent people from getting licenses who were in fact here legally. And now those individuals who are here legally will be able to get a license so long as they meet all of the other licensing requirements. I am going to, we have another, oh, sorry, Mr. Danner, I see your hand is raised again. I will unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted.
At that point, we all know that identity theft is a major issue. What happens if somebody gets oh, gee, I was able to steal the identity of Joe Smith. I mean, at that point, with no verification of it, it just seems like you're introducing risk into the system unnecessarily. Because you can have people who are not qualified coming into the system if they faked the correct credentials otherwise.
Thank you, Mr. Danner.
It looks like we have a hand raised by a Mr. Joshua Stallings. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, I think there's been a lot of conversation just around whether this should even be a law or not. And so my question is really just about how this is being implemented. And I know that y'all shared earlier that if we have specific questions about a license, that we should reach out to the board and the state that's in control of that license. But I'm wondering if at some point there'll be some kind of comprehensive list of all the licenses to which this law applies. Because I think in the community right now, there's just a lot of questions around whether people will be eligible now for a license, and it'd be really helpful just to have, information in a central place. So I'm just wondering if that's going to happen, if y'all have any other details on the implementation of this law that we can share with people. Thank you.
Thank you. So attached to the...
Sorry, hold on, Elena, 1 second. Nate, did you want to weigh in on that? From what I understand, it affects all of the licenses within the division.
Yeah, that's correct. So the way the bill is written is that it affects every single license that the division issues or regulates. So everything from accountants to vets, everything in between. And yes, eventually there will be, we will post information, as it gets closer to when the bill actually takes effect, right? Again, this bill hasn't actually taken effect. It takes effect September 7th, if I'm not mistaken. So once that gets closer in time, the division will start to put up information on each of the board or program web pages as well.
Where can we find thank you for that response. And where can we find a comprehensive list of all the licenses within the division?
If you go ahead, Nate.
No, go ahead. You're the one that's in charge. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, if you just go to the division's website, Elena's going there now, so you can see. And then we have them separated by healthcare professions and occupational professions. And you can expand there and you can see all of the license types. There are a few ways that you can find them. This is just one way, but this is a comprehensive list. You can see as well, while Elena's there, right underneath, there's a tab as well that says legislative updates. And so that's another good place to check to see about legislation that's passed and how it impacts certain licenses. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute and lower your hand. And then we have some more written questions that have come in. Leanne Rupp, LCSW NASW Colorado Executive Director, the National Association of Social Workers, NASW Colorado chapter, directly supported this bill and its passage in the Colorado legislature earlier this year. We appreciate this law and the allowances it creates for DACA program participants and others who wish to join the mental health professional field as social workers and other mental health providers here in Colorado. Thank you for the work you're doing to seek feedback and input as the details are developed regarding how to best implement these changes here in Colorado. And I did want to add one more thing about the previous question. So what might be confusing with regard to this stakeholder meeting is we listed off a number of boards and professions, boards and programs at the beginning. And we didn't list every single board and program within the division because the purpose of this meeting today is to seek feedback regarding the proposed changes to the rules. So Elena's showing the proposed changes to the rules, for example, for accountancy. If the board or program was not listed and is not part of the stakeholder meeting, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no impact. It just means that there are no proposed changes to the rules. So I think that that was a good question that you had, and hopefully that helps people understand why there are only certain boards and programs on that list. We also have another written question from Michael Shaffron. Can the various boards require licensees who are not lawfully present in the United States to disclose this to their clients or customers? I do not believe that the boards have the authority to do that. I think that that would require a legislative change. Another written question, Edgar Herrera. My name is Norma Garola. I'm a DACA recipient and support this legislation decision because we are here to work and this shouldn't be a barrier. We are here to represent electrician workers. We value that this has passed. My husband has applied for the electrician license and he has been working on his classes and has passed his test. He has followed all the requirements and we submit his application more than 3 months and his application keeps saying that there are 2 things pending. Is this something normal? If this already, on waiting for an approval, if this already changed, how come the profession of lawful, the proof of lawful presence still on the questions on the application? So like Nate mentioned, this bill is not effective just yet. And so we're currently working on the implementation of this bill to meet the effective date. If you have specific questions about your husband's license, then you're welcome to reach out, it sounds like, to the electrical board, or you can reach out again to the rulemaking inbox that's on the notice for today's meeting, and we can help forward your specific questions to the correct board. David Johnson, I show your hand is raised. David Johnson, you should be good.
Yes, hello, thanks again. Just to follow up on my previous question, as well as the previous person's question, once this bill is officially brought into law and enacted on, what is it, September 7th, will the questions about lawful presence be removed from applications for licensure?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand and place you back on mute. I am currently not seeing any more hands raised unless I'm missing any. Elena and Nate, if you can verify that for me.
That's correct. I don't show any hands either.
Okay.
I don't show any other written comments as well.
Okay, so we will just pause for a couple more minutes and continue to monitor if anyone else would like to provide any comments.
Looks like we have a hand raised by Mr. Daniel Tucker.
Okay.
Gonna unmute your line. Looks like you are self-muted. Mr. Tucker. Okay, looks like we might have some difficulties.
There.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. A couple of final comments. I think a comment that I would like to offer in passing and as this winds down is that I think while I'm sympathetic to folks who are here unlawfully, I think that the citizens, this is a nation of laws. This isn't a nation, that's what separates the United States from the rest of the world. That's why people want to come here. And that's really what this is about. This is really about folks who have come here from other places, who have irregular status, who are not citizens of the United States, and who are seeking to join in our society, but frankly are not doing it in the right way. Citizenship should come first, and the ability to join in the dynamics of the country and to participate in the life of the country. There's a process that should be adhered to, and most citizens of this country actually care about is that these laws are adhered to. I deeply dislike this because I think that folks like plumbers, I get that we have a labor and a trade shortage across many professions. We do not have enough plumbers. We do not have enough electricians. We do not have enough carpenters. There are many roles needing to be filled. But I do not agree with this approach at all. There have been a lot of references on this call to the work done by the legislature, and that we voted for these people. They're in office. They've as a representative republic, they've essentially the people have spoken through our representatives and have passed this bill. But I don't actually believe that to be the case. The mandate of the state legislature is that it looks out for the general well-being of the citizens of the state of Colorado. That it's looking out for people who are lawfully here, who are legally here, who are citizens of the United States, who are Colorado residents. But instead, this is being thrown wide to anybody and everybody, and I think greatly to the detriment of a lot of people in this state who, if given the proper chances, if the state legislature was actually doing its job, they would be given some assistance in order to fill those roles. We've had a pharmacist speak. We've had people from the nursing profession speak. I get that there are shortages, but why can't the state legislature address those shortages and do something to increase workforce training and participation among young people here? Instead of changing our regulatory climate such that a wide net can be cast, but without any thought of the possible consequences of that. A lady spoke earlier. She spoke about the nursing profession in Lafayette. I don't know what her capacity with English is, but what happens when folks come in and she's expected to deliver efficient and effective nursing care to them? Can she speak English? Is Spanish her native language? I mean, it seems that way, but I'm saying, can she effectively communicate? It's not about whether she can speak Spanish or English. Can she speak both, and can she speak English effectively when she needs to? The majority of the people that live in Colorado speak English. There are a lot of things here that I don't see anybody thinking about. I don't see anybody talking about. There's a lot of feelings and emotions, but the laws of the country have to come first. They are, and if we're not going to obey those, if we're not going to adhere to them, if we're not going to honor them, then the country means nothing. The country means nothing, and our supposed citizenship in this country means nothing. We, the citizens, the purported citizens of the United States, then are left without a country. We've been disenfranchised for the sake of others. And that's really what I see this as. This is a disenfranchisement of American citizens for political gain. That'll end my comment. I don't have anything else to say, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
I don't see any further hands raised, Darcy, but we do have a couple of written comments. I can start reading those.
Okay.
This is a comment from Jay Burke. My earlier written question about sanctuary state status being fostered by this new law has not been answered. Please respond to it. I apologize. I've got to scroll up to find your earlier comment, Mr. Burke. I'm sure Darcy read it earlier. It looks like his earlier comment was, since a 2020 law prohibited any additional, maybe that is not it. Let me see if I could find your earlier comment, or we could always unmute your line and you can speak. Okay, I think I may have found it. Does anything in this law support Colorado establishing sanctuary state status for itself? Does this law violate any federal law attempting to exempt Colorado from complying with such federal law?
Thanks, Elena. And I'm sorry I missed that question, so I appreciate you weighing in. So this doesn't have anything to do with sanctuary state status. And as Nate Brown mentioned earlier, this law is in compliance with federal law. So hopefully that answers your questions.
All right, we have another written comment by Michael Shafron. Licensing of persons who are unlawfully present in the United States is to the determinant of the licensee's home nations. As these talented and skilled persons are not contributing to the advancement of their home nations, societies, and economies. Another written comment by Paul Selvin. Professional engineers are required to abide by the laws and rules of the locality in which they are registered. Eliminating the ability to verify that applicants are lawful residents of the United States means that individuals who have indicated an unwillingness and/or inability to abide by the laws of this country would be applying for positions that they would otherwise be disqualified from, therefore reducing the likelihood of protecting the public welfare through professional registration. And then another comment by Mr. Daniel Tucker. Federal law means nothing if the federal government is not enforcing federal immigration law. And that concludes all of the written comments received.
So we have 10 minutes. This was, or sorry, 9 minutes now. This was scheduled until 10:30. So we will see if anyone else has any additional written comments or would like to speak before we wrap up the meeting. In the meantime, if anyone would like to submit written comments via email, you can always send those to Dora_DPO_rulemaking@state.co.us. It is helpful since this bill does impact multiple boards and programs and their rules. It is helpful if you can provide your license type if you're speaking from a specific profession. That way we can make sure that we get that to the correct board or under the correct program for the director. I'm going to go ahead and wait until 10:25 to see if anyone else raises a hand or types any written questions or comments. At 10:25, if we don't have anyone else, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the meeting. I have one hand raised. Joel Pourier. It looks like we can. I know you were having some trouble with audio earlier. Joel Pourier.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. Well, I'm just calling in, and as I've been listening through this, and wanted to thank Daniel for his comments. I echo those. And anytime I see legislation or bills that come through and use terms, can't prove lawful presence means somebody's here unlawfully and breaking the law, it just raises a flag for me. So, Dan, thanks so much for your comments. I certainly agree with those. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute and lower your hand. Okay. So it doesn't look like we've received a couple of thank you comments for having the meeting. We appreciate those, and we appreciate your participation today and willingness to speak and type in comments. So we want to thank you for participating in today's meeting. The stakeholder comments and program recommendations will be presented to each board and to the director before the permanent rulemaking hearings. Elena is showing on the screen now the tentatively scheduled hearing dates for each program and board. I am going to go ahead and read those as well in case people are calling in via phone and can't see the screen. So the Colorado Board of Accountancy, the permanent rulemaking hearing is tentatively scheduled for September 22nd, 2021. The Colorado Office of Combative Sports and Colorado Combative Sports Commission, October 12th, 2021. State Electrical Board, September 29th, 2021. State Board of Licensure for Architects, Professional Engineers, and Professional Land Surveyors, September 10th, 2021. Office of Outfitters Registration, August 30th, 2021. State Plumbing Board, October 27th, 2021. Office of Audiology Licensure, August 30th, 2021. Colorado Dental Board, November 4th, 2021. Office of Hearing Aid Provider Licensure, August 30th, 2021. State Board of Addiction Counselor Examiners, October 5th, 2021. State Board of Marriage and Family Therapist Examiners, October 29th, 2021. State Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners, September 10th, 2021. State Board of Psychologist Examiners, October 1st, 2021. State Board of Social Work Examiners, September 17th, 2021. State Board of Unlicensed Psychotherapists, October 15th, 2021. Colorado Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators, September 15th, 2021. Office of Respiratory Therapy Licensure, August 30th, 2021. State Board of Veterinary Medicine, October 14th, 2021. And State Board of Pharmacy, September 30th, 2021. September 30th, 2021. And just as a reminder, you can always find the information about the rulemaking hearings. We send them out via blast email to licensees and stakeholders. We also post them on every board and program website that's impacted under the public notices tab, and it's posted on the public calendar for each board and program. You're welcome to submit written comments as we head up into these rulemaking hearings. And as a reminder, if you would like to testify at the rulemaking hearings, you are always able to testify in front of the boards, and then on behalf of the programs that will be up for consideration by the director as well. So we want to thank you for your participation in the joint stakeholder meeting, as Dora is now responsible for implementing this new legislation. And we are going to go ahead and end the webinar now.